While the facts of the case will probably not be clear for some time, there are reports signaling, or generally the sentiment we are seeing, that the Iranian protests might be over. The sort of the biggest, the most people being outside, the most people protesting, might be on the downturn. The government has brutally suppressed and murdered tens of thousands of Iranian protesters, and maybe has actually managed to contain the situation. This doesn't mean that Iran is safe for even years to come. Iranian regime could still fall, could still, not handle the economical situation, not handle the civil situation, and still fall apart. But still, the brave people who went to the streets, like I've said, tens of thousands that have been murdered by the regime, those lives are gone, and those people didn't get, I think, fundamentally what they have promised, or what they got as a promise. Now, when it comes to dealing with nations, I think every nation should deal based on its self-interest. Doesn't There is no altruistic duty to go help other people protest or to save other people from their tyrannical regime. But I think once you tell them to go out and protest, once you tell them that go out and I'll support you, which is the thing that Trump did, I think at that point, when you don't follow up, you've just, the best people that were in Iran, you've just basically given them a death sentence. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Not a really happy episode, unfortunately. I'm Daniel. Joining me today is James Valiant, and today we'll discuss, like I said, possibly the end of Iranian protests, generally the way it has been going, the Western policy, and then I think we can also talk about the long-term Western policy that has been on Iran, or specifically America, and generally what is America in a sense? What is America when it comes to foreign policy? And trying to talk a little bit about that. So joining me, James. James, any thoughts on, yeah, most likely that these protests, the biggest protest that we have ever seen since the rise of the Ayatollahs, that
Yes,
it might just be over or on the downturn, basically.
this was the biggest since 1979. It really was. And Donald Trump said help is on the way. And help obviously was not on the way in time enough to save untold thousands of lives. I mean, it's hard to even know how many people have been killed and slaughtered on the streets and arrested. It's hard to know because, the Iranian regime cut off communications of the people to the rest of the world. So how are we supposed to? I mean, there are means we have of doing this, and so I think it's safe to say that untold thousands, maybe tens of thousands, of innocent people have been slaughtered and imprisoned. And who knows, knowing the nature of the regime, the kind of torture that goes on there. And so whether it is in another country's interest or not to deal with it, I think any decent human being, and certainly anyone informed by Ayn Rand's ethics and politics, knows that this is a tyrannical, savage regime, and what's happening to the people there is a horrific, horrific thing. But every time that the Iranian people have tried to rise up against their government or protest their government, America has not lifted a finger. We've turned our backs every single time, decade after decade. And in the 21st century, there have been repeated efforts, and there was nothing done. Mr. Obama, he would continue to negotiate, send pallets of cash in his continued negotiation with this savage regime. That's why you don't ever sanction or even negotiate with them, even through a third party, about their nuclear weapons. And again, Biden didn't do a damn thing. And now look at what Trump did. Trump encouraged them to take to the streets. And when they took to the streets, he said, help is on the way. Help was obviously not on the way fast enough to prevent thousands and thousands of people from being slaughtered. And you're right, there comes a point where a savage regime like that puts down the revolt because the activists either all die or disappear into some Iranian hellhole prison. And it intimidates even the fence sitters from going out there at a certain point because why? It's just a suicide mission. You're just killing yourself, endangering your family. And so it's really, really horrible. And it's worse when you do it like what Trump did. You say help is on the way. And when was that he said help was on the way? And how many untold thousands upon thousands were slaughtered since he said help was on the way, encouraging them to take to the streets and not doing a damn thing about it? As you know, Ayn Rand said in 1979, when the Iranian regime took over and they kidnapped American diplomats at the embassy, she said we should have reacted immediately. And I mean, even weeks after the event, she said it's probably too late to react properly. Timing is of enormous importance with these things for several reasons, both for the diplomatic oomph and for your ability to react. Um, and so, there was the pathetic Jimmy Carter, who was president at the time, had a pathetic attempt at rescuing the diplomats that was inadequate and incompetent and did not work. And that's, again, it's even worse when a president does that, tries and fails, or promises and the promise can't be delivered on in time. Now, when it comes to the issue of whether this dictatorship is actually in the interest of the United States to take out, I think that is a very straightforward question. Dictatorships, aggression is an inherent part, or at least certainly an expected part of dictatorships, again, for several reasons. They'll run out of victims at home, or they'll want to use a war. Look at the way Putin uses the war for his own in Ukraine for his own domestic political consumption. So there are various reasons why dictatorships need war, want war, will encourage war for their own propagandistic and keep the regime in power reasons. But with Iran, it's quite simple. They're an aggressor. They're seeking to dominate and intimidate the entire region. They yell death to America, death to Israel. They're attempting to acquire long-range ballistic missile capacity in conjunction with nuclear capacity. People say, oh, they're still years away from, I don't care. The mere fact that they're trying, when a country uses aggressive force, says death to America, and they're even trying to get nuclear missiles, that is an aggressive threat to the lives and safety of Americans right here at home. And I could give you a dozen other examples. I mean, shutting down international trade in the Red Sea via the Houthis. I don't care if they're doing it through proxies. They're the main supporters and suppliers of the Houthis. Ditto Hezbollah. I mean, how many Americans, Israelis, Frenchmen have been slaughtered through proxies or directly through Iran, the world's leading sponsor of terrorism? And so there are many, many good reasons why it is in the direct selfish interest of the United States to take them out. If, these Trump people say America first, and so many of them say, well, Iran, well, we can't take out Iran's government. Wait, what? That is not America first. That is putting blinders on and ignoring the full international context in this age of high-speed jet aircraft and intercontinental ballistic missiles. That is entirely unrealistic. So America, well, Leonard Peikoff, we're coming now up upon 26 years ago, said that we should take out the Iranian regime, and that would be the most important thing we could do to secure the area and to secure America's interests when America itself was suffering from terrorism. It may not be the same flavor of terrorists who hit us on 9/11, 2001. That doesn't really matter to me. When you take out states that sponsor terrorism, they are not merely dictatorships, killing and oppressing their own people. They've now become a threat to the rest of the world. So, I have to ask myself, how many attacks from Iran on American bases or upon Israel itself do we have to put up with? How many Israelis and Americans need to die before we realize they're more than just a threat to their own people, and they pose a real threat to the whole wide world? And as you point out, again, wisely, there may be other things that pressure the Iranian regime, economic pressure that America has been putting on them and so forth, that may help the regime to be make the regime insecure and bring it down. But when Mr. Trump made his promise, help is on the way, he had to know that help couldn't get there for quite a while. It still isn't there. I understand the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier group is on the way. And when a US aircraft carrier group is a pretty powerful thing and in itself might be able to take out a small government. But it's not there yet, Mr. Trump. And you encourage people to take to the streets when you do that. And what are you doing in the meantime? In the meantime, untold thousands of people have died. That is immoral and irresponsible in my view. Just right there, just right there. But if Mr. Trump, and there is indications that Mr. Trump does mean to do something about the regime a little more kinetically, then it seems to me the more he's been on the hook for all this, the more he's responsible for doing that. It increases his moral responsibility in eventually, I guess, doing it. But we are getting some signals that he does mean to do something more. And all I can do is hope and pray, because he is a bit unpredictable here. Hope and pray that pray, and I don't believe in God, ladies and gentlemen. I mean that obviously in the metaphorical sense. And hope is not a strategy. Obviously, I mean that in a metaphorical sense. But
I believe Trump would appreciate you praying to him. So yeah, we can
yeah,
move on.
probably yes. But the point is that Trump has already, as far as I'm concerned, mishandled this. Even if he does take serious steps to try and take down the Iranian regime, which I think are now mandatory on his part, ethically and strategically, there is no dichotomy between the moral and the practical. What he morally promised the Iranian people and the region, he has been far too tardy on in following up on, which diminishes the whole capacity of the Iranian people to react. And so the Iranian people's very capacity to take down their own government has been diminished. So we have to take even bigger steps if we mean to engage in regime change in Iran. And so many of Trump's friends are even discouraging it from happening. So it is a very sad, very grim, tragic thing. Yeah, of course, the primary fault here is the evil Iranian regime itself. But I have to say that Mr. Trump has done nothing but, well, doing nothing has meant that the Iranian people are in a worse condition. And who knows how many people have been tortured and killed since he made the promise and has yet to follow up on it.
We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. Just earlier, we'll never live it down, or we won't live it down for years or decades. Paraphrasing what Ayn Rand actually said about the Iranian hostage crisis, and that was specifically if we don't march on Tehran on day one, we won't live it down, and we are still not living it down precisely because we are doing the same mistake the American administration did during the Iranian hostage crisis. We are still doing the same mistake today. And yeah, I mean, what you said about Trump, right? It's nobody. There was no like automatic thing that Trump has to like tell people of Iran to like go to streets, right? If we had a follow up, like if we actually could have done something about it, it kind of reminds me of, and we are going about a year back, when Trump said, "All hell upon Hamas if they don't release the hostages by the time of his inauguration," right? And it's like, well, you can promise that. You just made a pointless promise that you didn't intend to keep or wasn't yours to make. And we are seeing that again and again, like even in this one, right? And I've heard as well that, yeah, the aircraft group is coming to Iran, right? And here is the thing, like if America wasn't ready for some action in Iran, like why are you saying that? Why are you and I think it's one thing, right? Like saying something you can't commit to, because like Iran like can know this stuff, right? And what does it say? Like if America is trying to like get aircraft group closer to Iran, right? What does it say to Iran? Murder everybody, kill them as soon as you can,
Yeah.
because if you manage to suppress it quickly, then America won't react because it will no longer have a pretense. And just one more thing about specifically like not being ready. When it comes to American foreign policy, I think especially if we are dealing with like where ships should be, Iran is pretty much the only, I think, immediate threat we can talk about China, and there might be like ships there, but the problem is we didn't have an aircraft close to Iran because of China. We didn't have it because of Venezuela, which again, I think the Venezuelan threat is like, I think there should have been something done about it, which again I don't think there was. Like what we expected to happen in Venezuela, I guess won't like actually happen because we'll just keep the vice president in charge. Well, we'll have to wait for the trial because with this administration, Maduro might get acquitted. But when it comes to like ships had to be ready in Venezuela because they were because that was happening, right? When we know like Iran, like even when it comes to these protests, like I'm sure American intel had something on this. I can't believe that maybe it was a surprise of how big it would be, but there's no way they like had no idea that this would happen. Like, and that's the thing. And Iran still feels a threat a little bit. We have a report that Khamenei is in hiding, is in bunker, basically still afraid. So there might still be coming. And I've seen like, I mean, I've seen reports about like Trump will strike. I think I've seen that like every day, like it might be today. So it's hard to say. And I've seen the similar stuff from like Israeli side. So it's hard to predict like when it happens. But even then, there seems like so much has already been surrender. Like especially like even at this point, right? Even if we have uh, like an actual revolt, like better Iran, just think of like who actually died here. It wasn't like a mix of fundamentalists and better sides. It was probably the best side of Iranians. Those are the one, like the people actually willing to risk their lives. That's the people who were murdered. It wasn't your, people sitting on the fences. Or I mean, to some extent, I think it might have been even that. But it wasn't the fundamentalists who were murdered. It was like the people actually willing to stand up. And like I said, and this is from, I mean, to some extent, it is from, I appreciate the potential in like every person, right? So there is like a selfish desire of like see the greatest people in all countries like stand up, but there is like a even selfish thing, right? Even if we want the better regime, now it's gonna be much harder because of a lot of the better people are simply gone.
Man, we obviously should have prioritized Iran over Venezuela. Not to say that the government of Venezuela didn't pose a threat to the United States or wasn't an evil dictatorship. No, no, no. But it seems to me, given what's been going on for years upon years now, decade after decade, that we should have prioritized Iran, probably over everything else, frankly. Not to say we ignore the security problems in China or ignore the security problems that Russia poses. No, of course not. But it seems to me that given the current context and situation, we should have been there ready to go and prepared after having weakened the regime, after Israel's many attacks and after America's attack. We should have been prepared to go after they have been we weakened the regime. Um, one thing that Trump supporters will often say is, "Oh well, his words may sound crazy, but don't listen to his words. Look at his actions." When it comes to political leaders, words are critical tools, and his words have impact. And here we can see it really vividly in the vivid colors of blood and death, the life and death consequences of a politician's mere words. For when you say help is on the way, you do encourage people to take to the streets. And as you just pointed out, probably the best people, the bravest people, the people who want the regime to go the most, the people who would have been our best friends in maybe creating for the world a better regime in Iran, were probably disproportionately taken out. And words have an impact. And Mr. Trump, your words without immediate follow up here might have caused the deaths of thousands, untold. I mean, we may never know the number of thousands of people that were slaughtered in the meantime because you couldn't follow up quickly, because you prioritized other things first. So a politician's, the president of the United States' words matter. You know, it was true when Obama drew his red line in Syria over chemical weapons and didn't follow through. Words are life and death when you're the president of the United States. Words are life and death. Innocent people will die. America's strategic interests will be irreparably damaged because of your reckless use of words. And here we have a great example of that, right? Help is on the way. The Iranian people take to the streets when the Iranian government becomes weakened, and weakened by, don't get me wrong. I'm glad Israel, they had to fight back. They were under missile barrage, little Israel. And when America hit, and when America puts economic sanctions on, we know we're weakening the regime. We know, and then we say, well, it's up to the Iranian people. And then he says, well, help is on the way, but he really can't follow up on that help. Now, if something doesn't dramatically happen, then Mr. Trump has not only hurt the Iranian people, he has dramatically harmed the words that might come from him later or words from another president, i.e. deterrence. So that when he says something's going to happen, why should any dictator in the world take that seriously, eh? If we don't do something now, and now it has to be all the harder. It's now harder for America. America has to do more now because of all those good people. As you point out, maybe the best people are the ones that were taken out. And so that makes it all the harder to do something about the regime. Words are powerful. And if you use words without the follow-up and the immediate follow-up, it's going to have life and death consequences. And unfortunately, I think we saw that unfold. But now, Mr. Trump, it is now all the more imperative that you take even what will probably be even more difficult actions and riskier actions, more serious actions, more dramatic actions. But all of that is now morally mandatory, or we're talking about real damage to America capacity for its words to have any deterrent effect on the bad guys in this world. And more than that, the security of America, the security of Western civilization. It is a horribly, it's not a pleasant topic today. Well, it was a grim topic today, because here an American president has promised help, and in the time it takes to even assuming he's going to do something, in the time it takes for the help to get there, because he was unprepared, has meant untold thousands of lives. And, he'll use the excuse of, well, they didn't do those public executions. And so what? You're going to give them more time? Or is that an excuse for why you can't do it and we're unprepared? No, they ought to have known from the outset clearly that this matters. So it's inexcusable, and it's a matter of life and death.
Yeah, and I'm talking about the executions. Not only that the best between protesters are being basically taken out, are being murdered, but also apparently among the police force or the law enforcement. Reportedly, there was a person hanged or put on death penalty because he refused to shoot at protesters. So even when it comes to the drastic tactics that the regime has taken, let's say it's hard to say the better people within the Iranian law enforcement, but for whatever, not completely demonic people that are among them, even those have been taken out, right? It's what matters is brutality for the regime. That's what I said. People can look up the episode we did in like the first few days. I said if Iran wants to get out of this, it needs to brutally suppress. That's the only way dictatorship can work. And well, hopefully they didn't like listen to me and did it after. They probably have their own understanding. But yeah, that's how you actually lead a dictatorship. You have to be uncompromising. You have to be brutal. You cannot allow any dissent, both among the population and among the law enforcement. You need your I mean, Hitler needed his SS. Iran needs the IRGC. They need this radical part, this radical section that does a lot. I want to quickly just comment on or that handles this like very like drastic situations. Bonnie said Trump will do nothing besides moving boats around. But here's the problem, because gunboat diplomacy is like a pretty powerful thing if you know how to use it. I mean, there is some evidence that when October 7th happened, Biden moved one of the aircraft carriers close to the Lebanon and Israel, and there is an understanding that they most likely prevented like a huge involvement of Hezbollah from the start. So that could have actually like that can work. My I don't know if favorite example from history, but especially America should know about it. I mean, James probably knows about the Perry expedition, right? Basically, all of Japan that was a complete isolation in like the mid 19th century. American expedition was sent out with boats. They came into a port. Nobody on the Japanese side was killed, but simply that visit, simply that showing of strength, like inspired or sort of committed Japan into like a years-long civil war, basically completely destroyed the shogunate system, restored like the power to emperors. So like even moving a ship around can have a great like maybe, and I mean I didn't see it on live, but imagine being on like a beach and seeing an aircraft group like standing there. That's a scare. You will make different decisions when you see that, and when you can conceptualize what those ships actually represent. So even moving ships around can do great things. Like I think if ships were there ready, I think we would have seen much more different situation. I mean, that's why Trump wants to move ships there now, right? Even if he doesn't actually do something, even having those ships there are doing a great amount of things. That the same with China, right? We are not having the ships simply there to when a war happens to do something, but it can lead to a good threat to if you see like a great projection of power, that can mean a lot.
Oh, man, it can mean all the difference in the world, and maybe you can avoid having to use it. But the impact of pointing a gun, just think in common sense terms, the impact of pointing a gun might mean that you never have to fire it. The impact of an armed guard versus an unarmed guard might make all the difference in the world. And in terms of changing bad people's behavior, uh, that's an easy inference to make there, Daniel. And there have been repeated instances in history where precisely that has been the deterrence that has changed behavior and even occasionally changed whole governments, as you observe. There's no question about that. And Mr. Trump was simply left caught unprepared if he does mean to do something. Oh man, I hope you're wrong, Bonnie. I hope he does do something. But with Mr. Trump, I'm not confident in any kind of prediction. I really, I know his priorities weren't straight. I know he wasn't ready when he said help was on the way. I mean, he had to say help was on the way. I mean, even he knew that he didn't have the power there to back up. They would say things like, "Oh, now that we've weakened the regime, maybe the Iranian people can do something about it." Well, guess what? That's what Remember how Stalin, of course, became ultra paranoid and started killing the people closest to him just to stay in power. Or think of Hitler. Hitler had multiple assassination attempts coming from within his own security forces or army. And see, that's what happens, you see. At least in the case of Hitler, we were doing everything we could to get our armies right up his rear end, frankly. But that's the correct kind of approach to this kind of thing. But yeah, what are you doing for the people who are doing their best to take out the evil, aggressive regime? And I look back to the Cold War era. I mean, yes, evil regimes have to use brutality to stay in power. I mean, if the Hungarians in the 1950s try and get something better, what do you think is going to happen? Warsaw Pact tanks are going to, Czechoslovakia, you're a Slovakian. Back when the Czech Republic and Slovakia were one nation, the Czechoslovakia tried to, again, and mind you, it was even just a more moderate but still socialist regime. What happens? tanks come in and brutally suppress, and they go right for the throat of the people who are their enemies. That's the way dictatorships must operate. That's normal course of business for dictatorships, brutality. And they will take out the very best because they will focus on their enemies, and they will focus on their enemies within their own government apparatus, police, security forces, the better people, the people who are at least comparatively better than the monsters, the demonic forces, as you put it, who are in charge. Those people are the ones who suffer first and the most. Um,
Yeah, and here is more about sort of like the pressure on Iran, because we usually talk about the protesters or sort of us acting, but the fact is, when it comes to even people within IRGC or the Ayatollahs or people in the military, the fact is they generally also don't want to end up in a really bad situation. I mean, you mentioned the some of the assassination attempts on Hitler, right? It wasn't from like these liberal former Weimar Republic, like we want to achieve great things in Germany now. No, it was from like Wehrmacht's either generals or soldiers or people, even people within the Nazi party who are like, okay, if we fail at this, we're all like screwed. We're all like done. Maybe
we're
it's better to
dead.
get rid
Yeah.
of this guy. Maybe it's better to get rid of this guy, and maybe we can make some deal with the allies to preserve some of our stuff. And in a way, this is the situation we should want to put in IRGC, or more importantly, I think the Iranian military in. Like, okay, if we fail at this, we're all gone. We might rather, take out the guys in charge, take out the ayatollahs, and maybe we can make some sort of deal with the West. Now, that might not necessarily be preferable or always preferable scenario, but it's a thing you want them to put into, because once they start turning on each other, I mean, that's when you win. That's when you have much bigger advantage. That's when the resistance is becoming much stronger. I mean, even, let's say Hitler wasn't assassinated, but a lot of Heydrich, a lot of people were assassinated.
Someone came
Uh,
close, you know what I
yeah,
mean? So the point is, that's what you want to have happen. And there's a perfect law enforcement. It's not just international affairs. There's a perfect law enforcement analogy to this. When you're dealing with organized crime, there are effective ways of getting them to turn on one another. There are very effective ways of getting them to turn on one another, and that can do half the job for you. But if you don't do that, then all you're doing is making it more difficult for you to really make a difference when you get there. If you get there, if you mean to do something, Mr. Trump. When you get there, if you get there, and if you mean to do something, Mr. Trump. Okay, the Abraham Lincoln Group is on the way. He said help is on the way. He's been signaling that something is going to happen. But the time has only made it all the more difficult, all the more urgent, and requires of him all the more activity, kinetic action. It is long, long overdue. And America's tardiness, well, America's 46 years of tardiness, coming on 47 years of tardiness on this, has only made it more difficult. And every year that passed, it became more difficult and more difficult and more difficult and more difficult. And we're coming upon now we've done it now. We've ignored it the better part of 50 years now, and we've created a much greater monster than we would have had to have dealt with the closer back in time we go. So Ayn Rand was exactly right. The minute you let days pass, you're already diminishing in your capacity, the political will to do it, all sorts of things, the strength of the regime, because the longer it's in power, the more it can develop internal security mechanisms. And here with this latest Iranian revolt, it was happening in every province. People were doing it all over the country. There were a variety of people doing it. This was the moment. And we were unprepared to help when it really mattered. He made promises before he could really make a difference. It is tragic beyond words, not only for American security interests and civilization's interests in general, but for the oppressed people of Iran.
Yeah, and I think sort of wrapping up, I think this goes to the importance of principles. Like I always, I don't know if I talked to you, James, about it, but sort of after I started like studying objectivism and trying to apply it in my life, oftentimes you find yourself not seeing immediate results because when it comes to things like principles, or even the sort of like virtues of objectivism, things like honesty or I mean, even most importantly, rationality, you don't really see results right away. Or with like daily habits, you don't see results right away. You usually start seeing them after like five, few years, or maybe I mean, depending on what it is. And so now I'm like starting to like reap the benefits of like applying objectivism from like 7 years ago, right? In many instances. And I think this applies to states as well. The fact is that principles are not about doing the right thing at a specific time. Principles are more about the everyday life of doing proper things. And that's what happens when it comes to Iranian policy, right? It's not necessarily like a single event that we did wrong or a single, I mean, we can like point to major events, but or even like specifically like we only did bad on Iran and like we are good everywhere else, right? It's a result of the lack of proper foreign policy in every regard, pretty much since World War II, and in some cases even before that. And yeah, we are paying for it, and we are constantly putting ourselves in worse and worse position because of that, right? I mean, take the helping the Soviet Union survive against the war against the Nazis, right? Then we had a Cold War because of that. How many then the Palestinian movement, Iran itself, probably, I mean, China definitely, communist China wouldn't survive without Soviet Union, most likely. Like on and on, so many like foreign policy disasters were created because consistently we are refusing to do what is necessary. We are refusing, or we are refusing to even recognize what's really happening. So when it comes to Iran or when it comes to even Trump, I think somebody earlier in the chat mentioned that Trump's words don't mean anything. But generally, Western words don't mean anything. The fact is, how many red lines did Obama did? What was like George Bush's like foreign policy? Who did he attack? Or even Josh Bush Senior, right? Earlier we mentioned what's his name? I cannot remember now. Um, the who handled the Iranian crisis
Oh, Jimmy Carter.
before
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter, his foreign policy, right? Like we can bring
Oh, yeah.
bring that up. Like it goes on. I mean Eisenhower, right? I think he handled the Suez Crisis. So like you could point out to like every single president and everywhere
Ronald
it,
Reagan
it was
and
this.
Mujahideen in
Yeah,
Afghanistan, again and again. America creates its own enemies repeatedly because it, precisely as you point out, it doesn't have a principled stance against dictators, and it really hasn't. For more than 100 years now, American foreign policy has coddled and sanctioned dictatorships that inevitably come its enemy. Germany, Russia, Afghanistan. You go, I get tired of saying it over and over and over because America, by its sanctioning of dictatorships, I mean, Obama, like I say, was sending pallets of cash to Iran and negotiating with Iran over its nuclear weapons. And here we sit. America has this really bad habit of creating its own enemies because it doesn't take a principled stand on dictatorship as such. And you make a really great point about principles. You know, the first one little lie you tell, okay, it can come back and bite you in the tail, and it cannot have positive consequences. It's going to destroy the integrity of your mind, and and one lie will lead to another. So even a single lie is damaging, right? But on the other hand, if you start getting in the habit of lying, you are in a policy of self-destruction. It's like that first cigarette you have, right? That first cigarette you have is probably not going to give you emphysema or lung cancer, but you have caused some damage. And if you then keep making it a habit, then the more and more you smoke, and the more regularly you smoke, it's like now you're starting to play Russian roulette with your lungs, right? It comes a point where the self-destructive behavior is going to eventually cause worse crises, a bigger crisis. You're just digging, and you keep digging your own hole. One little hole is bad enough. I can trip over it, but by the time you a 3 meter trench, you're gonna fall in and break your neck. Okay, yeah. To the degree you're unprincipled is the degree to which you are acting against your own long-term self-interest. That's the way principles work. That first little mistake can probably be fixed, won't probably cause as much damage. Although it is, you're still causing damage. It's not the thing that's going to fall. You're going to fall into the 3 meter trench. But if you keep digging, believe me, it'll be a 3 meter trench, and you'll really have a hell of a problem getting out of it. That's the way principles work, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely. Whether it's honesty, dictatorship, or a bad habit. That's the way these things work. Yeah, Daniel, amen, and I agree 100%.
Yeah, and just like you said with the cigarettes, right? Even once you decide to stop, once you decide to, fix your habits or fix your principles, once you try to apply proper principles, what happened isn't erased. You might still, get
Right?
cancer. America does have a stage 4 foreign policy cancer, and there is no easy
Yes,
way
okay.
out.
Exactly right. We've let this get out of control for more than a century now in not properly dealing with dictatorships. Absolutely. And boy, has it meant world disaster and American security concerns. We make our own enemy every time.
And yeah, at some point you are in
Talk
an
about
impossible
bad
situation.
habits.
Yeah, at some point you are in an impossible situation, but the way out isn't, well, let's just try to kick the can down the road even more. Maybe it will like, maybe somehow if I'm unprincipled long enough, it will like fix itself.
It
No,
only makes it worse and worse and worse. Can't
if
you
you
see?
want to stop the habits of smoking, the thing you do is you stop smoking. You don't continue and try to justify it. Just quickly, somebody in the chat says Daniel has long hair now. Just like principles, the hair grows every day. It's about the everyday. So I'm not. I don't suddenly have long hair. It's been a process. But I think because of the camera, because I'm traveling, it like puts me in like a different perspective, and maybe it's more
You
noticeable.
suddenly changed. It went from a crew cut to long hair. No, we're not. No, 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 no. That's not the way hair grows. Yeah, it's a little bit every day and every night it grows. Yes, yes, yes. It's like
Uh,
needing to shave. If right? At some point it becomes her beard.
the person who said that says he's sorry. I wasn't like attacking.
Yeah,
I just thought
yeah,
it
yeah.
was
No,
like a
no, I'm sure
funny
they
funny
meant it
point.
benevolently. I like it, by the way. So yeah.
Thank you. We have a super chat from BC. Thank you so much. He says, Supreme Leader needs old Sparky. However, it needs to happen. It should happen, and it should have happened to Ruhollah Khomeini as well. Dictators shouldn't die of old age. Like that should be the standard policy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Good rule of
uh,
thumb there. Talk about a principle. Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to aggressive dictators, countries that have a sense of self-interest should snip them in the bud. And dictators are the ones who determine the way we deal with them, right? They have decided to treat their people with force and violence. They have dictated the only terms on which better nations can deal with them, force or violence, or you don't deal with them at all. And that's got to be the principle and the rule here. And unfortunately, it's not a rule or a principle that America, in its leadership role of the world in the world since the world wars, has followed, much to the world's diminished security, much to the suffering of oppressed people in dictatorships.
although I guess Ruhollah Khomeini didn't technically die. He died of like 5 heart attacks, but he was like 89. I think at that point we can say that this was dying of old age.
Yes.
And like I said, shouldn't happen. We
Well,
have
old men have heart attacks. Okay, that's also a well-known fact of reality, but they should not die of natural causes. These brutal monsters who are brutalizing their neighbors and their own people, they should die the violent death that they deserve, and they've dished out on so many others.
So thank you so much for that, PC. Super chat from Bonnie, thank you so much, and super chat from PC again, thank you so much. He says Carter betrayed Iran in 1979. Glad he lost in 1980. Um,
That was a large part of it. The American people were so disgusted at Jimmy Carter's first inaction and then incompetent, modest reaction that it really helped Ronald Reagan get elected president in a, what was it then, a 48, I think it was something like 48 out of 50 states went for Ronald Reagan. Oh, Mr. Trump, that's what a landslide looks like.
Wait, wasn't the second election a landslide?
Yeah, 49 states. I think one was 49
Oh,
out
okay.
of
So, okay,
50, and
both.
the other was 48 out of 50.
Okay.
Just a little, Mr. Trump likes to say, well, I was the best, the biggest, the word, and no one's ever seen a landslide like this ever before within my lifetime. I've seen bigger landslides, okay? 48 or 49 out of 50 states. Now that's a landslide. But,
Probably within my lifetime, you saw bigger like landslides.
Mr. Trump says the sky is blue, check.
Uh, well, with that, James, any last thoughts from you? And also, where can
No,
people find
no,
you?
no, no. And I suppose late is better than never, and at this point, it's absolutely mandatory. So let us hope that Mr. Trump's help is on the way, but it's made all the harder by his the way he's was caught unprepared and allowed untold thousands to die in the meantime. So, Mr. Trump, it is now morally obligatory upon you to save America's security interests, the security interests of the area, and to help, as you promised, the long suffering and oppressed people of Iran.
And where can people find you?
Oh, here, I do some, today is Sunday. We've just completed, for example, a seminar that we do. It's only for paid members, but if you are a paid member, you can participate in a seminar we're doing on objectivism, the philosophy of Ayn Rand by Dr. Leonard Peikoff, the masterwork on the philosophy that informs our analysis of public policy here on the Daily Objective. So if you're interested in the ideas, you're getting a perspective here you won't find many other places on this planet. Check it out and do become a paid subscriber to the Ayn Rand Center UK. You get a lot of perks if you do that. And you can find me if you really want to catch me and you have a question for me at Facebook. I'm James Stevens Valiant at Facebook, where I answer questions almost every day.
And we have one more super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says over 30,000 lost now in Iran. Yeah, I've seen reports of, I think, yeah, above 30,000. So yeah, definitely.
Estimates.
Even the
Estimates,
lowest
friend.
estimates are at like 5,000
Yes.
murdered.
So all I can say is untold thousands upon thousands upon thousands.
And also, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Damned Dan. Links are going to be in the description as well as everything else. And we will be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective and the reality show, hopefully talking about some strike happening in Iran or, hopefully something a bit more positive or something giving us a little bit hope. I mean, for the sake of the best within Iranian people, but for us as well, because Iran is also a threat to us and has always been for the last decades. With that, thank you, James, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye bye.
Be safe.